Bupkis is the brand new Peacock original show, which hit the streaming service on May 4th. The show is written, produced, and stars Pete Davidson. Pete Davidson actually plays himself in the show. The show revolves around what his life has basically been like all the way back from his childhood to where his father sadly died in 9/11, all the way up to the obviously very famous career that he has had, where basically everyone in the world knows exactly who he's dating and this, that, or that. So we kind of get to the show about him. While he plays himself, the majority of the cast does play other characters who are are real people or who are not. Edie Falco plays Amy, who is Pete Davidson's mom in the show, and Joe Pesci plays Joe, who is Amy's mom and Pete's grandfather. Show also has revolving around casts like Brad Garrett as Roy, Pete's uncle, Bobby Cannavale as another uncle of Pete Davidson, and then revolving around amount of cameos that are obviously spoiled in the trailer, but also the show also includes Pete Davidson's real life girlfriend, Chase Sue Wonders, who plays Nikki on the show. The show is 8 episodes long and is really around from 24 to 32 minutes in runtime per episode. So that is Bupkis. Welcome to Max Talks Movies. I'm giving you a non-spoiler review of Bupkis on Peacock. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Ring the bell if you're new to the channel. I do movie reviews, these types of TV show reviews, movie rankings, and weekly box office breakdown shows. So please subscribe, ring the bell if you're new to the channel. Comment down below. First of all, have you seen Bupkis on Peacock? Tell me if you did. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Would you want to see a season 2 of this show? If you have not seen it, tell me. Why haven't you checked this one out? Did you even know this show was out, or are you just not a big fan of Pete Davidson? Let me know in the comment section. And also please like the video, guys. The thumbs up button, that's how you support this channel. So I was actually very excited for the show. I am a fan of Pete Davidson, and then right off the bat I do want to say, before you're going to get to my positives and my negatives and my score, that this show basically does revolve around if you like Pete Davidson or not. He writes the show, he plays basically a version of himself, and you either like that type of humor or you don't like his type of humor. And I think that's going to be the big point for a lot of people. For me, Pete Davidson was one of my favorite people on SNL. And with the people that he left with, including himself, the show has really faltered for me ever since that group of people has left the show. And for me, he's very just easily funny. And the reason why he's so funny was funny on SNL was that he was just himself a lot of the time. A lot of his humor for me really clicked. So I was very excited for the show. Obviously, with the Joe Pesci playing his grandfather got me excited, but also the amount of cameos. I mean, there are multiple major cameos in about every episode of this episode of the series. That got me excited. So also said all 8 episodes also are all available on Peacock. They're not doing week to week, so you can binge all 8 episodes right now. So positives, the negatives, and my score. Now, I'm going to get to the comedy a bit and the performances, but I do really think the best part of this show and the most surprising part of the show is that this show actually has a lot of heart to it. While, yes, there are a lot of ridiculous situations, a lot of episodes are kind of just meaningless, pointless, let's have a fun time Pete Davidson type episodes. There are episodes, like for me, episode 2 and 7 in particular, which are really heartfelt, yes, have comedy in it, but really do touch on something really personal to Pete Davidson. It feels like in real life. Episode 2 is kind of an episode dedicated to going back and forth between the past and the present, between a relationship that Pete has with his uncle Tommy, played by Bobby Cannavale, revolving around Pete Davidson's actual dad dying, and the fact that the week after his dad died in 9/11, he had to go to the wedding of his aunt and new uncle. And I really love that episode. I think it's the best episode of the series so far. Going back and forth between Pete Davidson as a child and Pete Davidson now. And I thought that episode was really great. And I also thought episode 7 was fantastic. An episode where basically Pete's drug use has basically come to a point where he needs to go to rehab. And I thought that whole episode was really great. So this show had a lot more heart. I thought this would be a stupid kind of time with Pete Davidson. You do see with a lot of these movies or even now TV shows where actors are playing themselves in a show or movie, that things are more likely ridiculous. Things like even This Is the End, or even, as you know, I like the movie a lot, even Unbreakable, A Way of Massive Talent is definitely an over-the-top version of Nick Cage. And there are points where, yes, this is definitely an over-the-top, most of the time it's an over-the-top version of who Pete probably is in real life. But there are times where it feels like it's the real Pete Davidson. I think that's a real strong point of the show. The other great thing about the show is I'll get into Davidson specifically in a second, but I think the two strong performances really bring the show together is Edie Falco and Joe Pesci. They're equally fantastic, but I think Edie Falco in particular is probably the strongest performance in the show. She obviously has gone throughout her husband dying in 9/11, the character in the show. Then having a son who is literally in the news every single day, and she has to kind of believe everything that is said on the news, because if maybe it says he dies, that she thinks that. And I think there's a lot of great things they've explained, obviously, about Pete Davidson himself being a famous person, what it's like to live that type of lifestyle, but they do an equally good job of showing what the mother of this famous of a person also has to go through. And I really like that dynamic the most on the show. I think they really did a great job, the authenticity of, if you had a famous kid, what would that relationship be like with them, and how do you get perceived now out in your job or just in life in general? Very funny, as I said, that Joe Pesci was in the show. That's one of the big points. I was like, wow, if Joe Pesci is very selective, he doesn't do tons of projects anymore, as he's getting up in age, and he is also great in the show, and his chemistry with Davidson is excellent in the show. They also have a lot of heart going into there, where Pesci kind of sniffs out a lot of the BS that's been going on in Davidson's life and the things that he needs to get out of his life, and the things he needs to keep in his life. I really liked those characters. Obviously, Brad Garrett, Brian Cannavale, who I'm normally not a big fan of. Cannavale does a good job in the show, and there are a lot of cameos, and all of them have kind of been spoiled in the trailer. But there's a couple in particular which are really excellent, but because they're in the trailer, some of you maybe have not even seen the trailer. I'm not going to get into who pops into the show, but there are some really funny cameos, and the show really generally is funny at times. More funny than it's not funny. I just enjoy Pete Davidson, and first of all, we'll get to him. He is the reason why you're watching the show or not, and he's really good. Of course, he's playing himself, but his comedic timing is really great. His genuine cast. Chemistry with the cast obviously is on point, as a lot of these people are playing people in his life. So I liked his chemistry there, but he's also a convincing lead. He's not the most likable person, obviously, in real life or probably on the show. But he knows that. He's very self-aware of what his image is, and I think that's why the show works more than it does. And I also want to say Chase Sue Wonders, who's obviously his now real-life girlfriend. She's also really terrific in the show. There's a storyline revolving around her in episodes 6 and 7, which are really excellent. She kind of has nothing to do with the first half of the show, and towards the end of the show, when it's kind of a hit or miss relationship between Nikki and Pete in the show. And I just like obviously they have great chemistry, but she's also really excellent, and I like to see her in more things as well. So to get into some of the negatives, as I said, there's some really just pointless episodes that are not very funny. And there are some bits, especially like there's an episode called Crispy Town, which I just found more annoying than I did boring. It was just not a good episode at all for me. And there's some episodes like that, they're just kind of pull you out. There's some episodes, I said, brings in heart. And sometimes tonally, it's a tough show to binge, I think, sometimes, because there's some episodes that are both funny and heartfelt, and then you go to totally stupid episodes. So I think tonally, episode to episode, I think sometimes the show feels off. Maybe if it was week to week, I wouldn't feel the way, but because you're binging it, sometimes going from episode to episode just have too many dramatic tonal shifts. I think from a structure point of view, I think the show could have been a bit more structured. We didn't go from something that was really stupid, it still could be funny, but still is really stupid, to then something that's kind of serious. Like going from the first episode to the second episode could be kind of drastic. The first episode is pretty bold and it's comedy, and the second episode is probably the most serious episode of the season. So I think tonally, from a structure point of view, I think episode to episode need to be fine-tuned a bit more. I also would have liked with the Pete Davidson's sister, that character. She had a lot more to do, as I said, in also in the last 3 episodes. I do wish she had more of a character towards the end of the show. So that was a character that I really wanted to see implemented more. She's also someone who's now a sibling. Doesn't seem like she's getting as much attention from the family, and what's that like? I kind of would have liked to dive into that relationship a bit more. And also didn't love the finale of the show. It was kind of a mixed bag for me. There's some really great stuff in the finale for the season, and some that just wasn't for me. But overall, I had a good time at Bupkis. I would totally be down for more of the show. I don't know how Peacock kind of determines what for them gets them to a season 2. But again, I like Pete Davidson, so I enjoy the show. Edie Falco and Joe Pesci are also fabulous in the show with great chemistry. The show has a lot more heart than I think it does on the surface if you just watch the trailer, which for me was one of the big reasons why I really genuinely enjoyed watching the show. So overall, I'm going to give Bupkis a 3.5 out of 5 stars, 67% for Bupkis on Peacock. So if you wanted to kill some not that long 25-minute episodes for 8 episodes, put on Peacock. You can watch this show right now. So that's my review of Bupkis. If please like the video, subscribe, ring the bell. I'll be back with more reviews very soon.